Hello, I'm very happy to welcome you today at This is England Short Film Festival 2024. Ryan Page, you are the writer and the director of Making Up.
Yeah.
And Poppy O'Hagan, you are the producer, okay, the person no one knows about, but it's very important for the making of a film. We'll get back to this very soon. Ryan, to start with, about this story, so you will just very briefly tell us about the story, about the writing of the story. How did you come up with this idea, please?
So I just wanted to tell a self-contained story, a kind of a relationship story, kind of a period piece from the visual side, so it's set in the 80s, and there's a pub local to where I live in East London, which got quite an eclectic crowd. It's kind of like a mix of kind of an older classical community crowd and then a lot of a queer crowd as well, and that was kind of the inspiration for the setting, and the characters kind of grew out of that, the father and the daughter, so that was the kind of where the idea blossomed from.
Yeah, because it's mainly a father and daughter relationship that is being scrutinized at a very special moment in the life of the father. So it certainly triggers many things in the story.
Yeah.
So how did you, once again, I mean, what made you think that that type of subject would be interesting to show?
I think in looking at the dynamics, you know, as we've discussed, like with some films of a similar nature, it's usually rejection from a parent, whereas in this film it's rejection from a child. And because as well the pub that inspired the film, they do a lot of drag nights there, so that was kind of part of the DNA of the emerging film. And so Ted, the character, is a drag queen, and when we meet the characters in the first when we kind of enter the film, he's trying to reconnect with his daughter that he's been estranged from for a while. And I guess it was just exploring the themes of shame, the themes of rejection, and why a child might have difficulty embracing something that is deemed by society to be slightly taboo, especially in, like, you know, a previous decade. Family is very at the center of your story. It's very interesting with the pictures, the photographs in the end of the daughter's son or boy. And so you can feel that here. What I really love in the film is that nothing is pointed at. Okay, it means that you give hints to start people thinking about elements that everybody has been through in their life, and so. Even though your parents were not drag queens, there are things you recognize in it when you were ashamed of your parents at one time in your life, or maybe as a parent, because I'm old enough to be a parent, about your kids, and that's very universal, I think, and that's what I really loved in it. Definitely, you know, every family has some sort of conflict, doesn't it? We all have disagreements, and we're all, you know, like, I think sometimes when parents have children, they expect their children to be mini-me's, and then they're shocked when this person's a whole defined version of something they weren't expecting. So, as you say, it's kind of universal in terms of the conflict that arises, whether that's for a sexuality or a belief, or, you know, the kind of the nuance that comes with that.
So the film is very well built, and you've got a succession of shots which are very, I mean, you get into the drag queen stage now, and then you get into this women's world, and so there is a lot of work of production, I think, that's behind it. So can you tell us about how you work on a project like this from start to the end? What are the stages when you are very much involved, and others maybe where you leave the director do his job? So can you tell us about that?
Well, I think on a short film, often it comes from really the will of a director and writer to make it. There's often not a lot of funding, especially in the UK, so it comes from a lot of just pushing a project through, finding people that will help you, really. And so I think a lot of this project came in the prep because, well, firstly, with a period project, you really have to pick your locations well, because you've got to make sure you don't have to do too much to them to be in keeping with the story. So I think a lot of it came before. I mean, this project in particular came quite late to me and actually had a whole life before me joining it, due to it nearly going a couple of times before and for various reasons falling through. So I think when I finally joined the project, it was very much putting in place concrete pieces really to ensure that when we wanted to film, we were ready to go. So costume, location definitely, and crew as well, finding people to join us on our journey.
And everything in between, like, you know, the logistics that Poppy was arranging, whether that was travel or food, to make sure on the day everyone's fed, happy.
Well, that no one
around.
has to think about anything else apart from doing their job. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, because once again, that's what I say, it's the invisible part of the work, but it's amazing. I mean, what you need to think of beforehand, you know, when to make sure that things get well. You know? And so that's why I like to ask questions about the production all the time, because I know it's something that is not very well regarded in France. We tend to think that only the director is worth mentioning, you know. But so about the theme again, about the film, what I really loved is the fact that you don't take side with any of them. So the daughter and the father are both. So of course, the father, we feel empathy towards the father, but towards the daughter too, because we feel that she suffered from her father's choice. So the fact is, there is a lesson in life, I should say, about choosing your life. So can you tell us about what you wanted to say with this?
Well, I'm glad it comes across as quite balanced, because obviously in my own mind I kind of understood what the backstory might be and obviously why they've got their kind of different viewpoints. And actually the cafe scene was quite difficult to pull off, because it was hard when you've got characters that have met for the first time to try and not make it too expositional, but to give the audience enough kind of information to contextualise that maybe the decision wasn't one Ted wanted to make, and obviously Cassandra's obviously quite hurt, she's a bit confused, and obviously try not to make her too much. I think there was a draft quite early on where she was quite rude and quite callous and hurtful because of the anger that's naturally there as a character. And I think as well, because Jess, who plays Cass, is such a brilliant actress, she managed to bring a lot of warmth to a character that's projecting as quite a cold, distant character. And I think it was just kind of like making sure, in terms of it being balanced, leaning into the truth of the situation, you know, Dave believing in everything Ted was doing and Jess believing in everything Cass was doing. So when the conflict arises and they do kind of reconcile, you understand that it's not kind of like neatly tied up, that there's going to be some, if we imagine they reconcile fully past the end of the film, it's going to be a bumpy road, as it always is, to meet halfway. But to try and, in 15 minutes, make sense of why they have the viewpoints they have. So I felt that was a bit waffly, but I don't know if that makes sense.
No, really, and but as you said, once again, I mean, what is very difficult in short films is that you need to get to know the characters immediately, and to make sure that you feel for them, and so that's very difficult, but you achieve that perfectly well, because once again, I mean, either the daughter or the father, I mean, you can feel what they've been through, both of them. When you start, I mean, after a few seconds of the films, you're already in the character, so that's what I really loved about that. And so my last question is about the balance of the scenes, and as I said, you managed perfectly well to let the viewer just feel, choose what he wants to think, but it's not too didactic. You're not saying, this is what I want you to think about it. Okay, so is it when editing that you decide to add a little bit of this or remove a little bit of that, or was it written beforehand completely, the way you wanted to have it in the end? Did the final product resemble what you had in mind first, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a bit of both. I mean, what was quite nice was when Dave came on board, the main actor, he said what appealed to him about the script was that there's a lot that's left unsaid. It's kind of like sentences that begin that trail off. So you're not kind of saying to the audience, this is it. And, like Cass has what he thinks is a wedding ring on that turns out to be an engagement ring. And I think we followed the script pretty closely. There are a few bits we could pull out. And I mean, especially in the cafe, because there are certain lines that you just didn't need. And that scene, I'm always conscious that it kind of goes over a bit too much. But I think as well, because we're on quite a tight schedule when we're filming, we kind of had to follow the kind of the script and the kind of the plan quite closely, with some, flexibility in for good measure. But yeah, it was quite nice in the edit to pull a few bits out and maybe take out a few lines that felt a bit kind of like surplus to what the audience need to know. But yeah, I think we followed the kind of template.
Yeah, and by that point as well, when we shot it, the script was already very well defined. It had been worked through
And we did a read through as
a
well,
long
didn't we? Which
time,
was
yeah.
helpful to make sure how does it sound coming out of the mouths of the cast,
All right.
like just to, you know.
It
so yeah,
sounded
was-
right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, anyway, the result is great.
Oh, thank
So
you.
congratulations. And so I can't wait to watch it on big screen this evening. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
And hope we'll see you in the future with other films, of course.
Yeah, I hope so.
Definitely.
Thanks a lot.
Merci.
Merci.